Hello friends, how are you today? Well, today I have some astrology stories for you related to the total lunar eclipse, which is on Sunday, May 15th. Pacific time, it's at 9:11 p.m., and then we have the full moon directly after at 9:14. So there are three key stories in this eclipse, three key prominent energy stories, and then a fourth that is prominent but also from like the shadows. And I want to share these with you. Now, as I mentioned on my last video, I know that this is a different way of looking at the astrology and of doing an astrology video. So usually what astrologers will do is look at the houses and the signs and give advice to people based on their sun sign or their ascendant sign. And what I'm doing is telling you what the prominent themes are and then asking you to take responsibility for checking in and seeing what it means to you. What's this do in my life? Because I think that what you will find is these stories have meaning across the signs. And the reason is that if you're an ascendant but you have a large number of planets in, one house or another house, or if you have meaningful aspects that touch your first house, your ascendant house, or if you have critical points in the chart, or if you have interesting geometries, then you can be affected by these stories based upon how they relate with your chart. And the easiest way to understand this or figure it out, if you don't do an astrology chart for yourself, is to use your intuition, look within and see what resonates. I have always found that it always seemed like astrology was just, telling me things about myself that I was like, oh yeah, because, well, it's just really interesting. And so I think that in telling the astrology stories this way, it brings it to mind. So in other words, hearing about my sun sign or my ascendant sign, I know myself well enough to say, oh, okay, I get that. That totally makes sense that you talked about my sign being this way, and I see how I'm like that or where that reflects in my life. But with the stories, it's information that we might not uncover by just reading a horoscope for a sun sign or an ascendant sign. And so I think it can add a level of depth and also give a context for greater meaning of where do we fit in, where does what is going on in our lives fit within the greater human story unfolding, because, we are individuals and we have individual purpose and we're incarnated souls in human bodies, and we're alive. We're living souls in a living human body. But we're also part of humanity, and humanity is a collective, and we like being with each other. Not everyone does, but for the most part, people want to know about what's going on in their community because they're looking at energies, they're looking at the stories, they're looking at confirmation. So I just wanted to give that background as to why I approach it this way, and also it's just naturally what happened when I started doing this. So my mind is putting the reasons around it. Okay, so now let's proceed to the stories. So this is the lunar eclipse chart, okay? And it's very similar. There's only one difference in all of the charts between the full moon and the lunar eclipse moon chart, and that is where the part of fortune is and where the axes are in the chart. Those will vary depending on your location, but otherwise than that, everything else is pretty much the same. I'm expanding the chart like this because this is where the part of the chart where there are major stories. So the first story is the goddess's return home. We're going to address that after we look at this big chart because I have another chart with all the goddesses on it. The main story on this chart is a breakout of the new. And it's just fascinating because it surprised me that was the energy here. I was, for some reason, I was having this feeling of foreboding. Maybe it was mental as I was thinking about the eclipse. I think it's because in the days before the eclipse, going back like 7 days, 5 days before the eclipse, I was feeling, that's how I was feeling. I was feeling like, and I was feeling affected by this energy, but not clear on what it was. But as I've gotten within the 3-day window of this eclipse, what I feel is this real focus inward, this desire to complete projects, and a reliance within on the knowledge that all is turned to the highest good. And this is my approach. It's I have a spiritual approach as well as looking at the science of the astrology. Okay, so where you see that in the chart, where you see this stepping into the new is right here when you look at the essential dignities. And this gives us an idea of where the power is in this chart. Out of all of this, what's not just meaningful, because there are meaningful aspects that have less power, surprisingly. So then I'm going to explain why that completely falls in with the goddess story. Okay, so stepping into the new, look here at Jupiter. Okay, Jupiter has a +10 score in terms of the dignities, so it's power on the chart. And Mercury has a +10 score. These are really high energies. And Mars followed up with a +8 here. So let's take a look at Jupiter. Jupiter is at 0 degrees, which is a critical degree of Aries. So Jupiter just is entering Aries right now, and in this eclipse at 0 degrees fully embodies the potency of the ram of Aries, of pioneering, moving forward, activating plans, stepping forth, initiating. And we've got right here Mercury at 3 degrees. So it's within a 3-degree conjunction, and it's semi-sextile, which is supportive. So it's not just moving forward, but also mental analysis, thinking critically, and then talking about these plans as well, or talking about moving into the new. Now, I'm not sure if the talking is going to be prominent or just the mental work and strategy. We're at the beginning of Gemini here at 3 degrees of Mercury. So we'll see. But the sun is conjunct within 8 degrees, so it's bringing the light of awareness to Mercury. It's bringing a light onto the ability to construct the plans that Jupiter in Aries wants to expand and bring forward. And within 2 degrees of the sun is the head of the dragon. We're going to look at this in a second because it's very, very interesting. And it was a surprising part of the story for me. So Jupiter has recently come, so it's come through Aquarius, okay? And it's come through the Aquarius, which is the hallmark of the new age, new technology, innovation, new ways of living together, addressing social consciousness in new ways. What does that even mean? And how does, have the theories in that area even been working? Total review, right? And the need to expand and upgrade. We talked about this on the last video, about the meaning of Saturn. Was it the last video? On a video I did about Saturn and Vesta. I think it was the last video of the astrology of the Schumann wave. Saturn and Vesta in Aquarius, and what that means for like communal life, human life, as an individual, and then within families, and the families combining together to make communities. That was fascinating. Okay, so then Jupiter comes into Pisces and sits in the shadow, right, for some period of time before breaking out into the new. So during this time that Jupiter does that and goes over Saturn, after coming through the energy of the new, it has time to review the shadow aspects and elements of its coming influence, right? What am I going to expand, and what will expand so much that it will break its structure? And there's a Plutonian type of energy in that, right? There's a Plutonian type of energy in that, because if something goes to excess, it may break its structure or break out of its structure. And if it does that, it may fall flat. It may not expand in a way where it continues living in the world, right? In whatever way that is. That brings us to the next story. This was fascinating to me because you can see here so obviously that Saturn right here squares the nodes and the moon and sun. This is amazing. Watch this. Okay, so Saturn is in with 1 degree square of the moon and 2 degrees square of the south node. So what does this mean? This is in Scorpio, the land of the secrets, the land of the occult, and the land of life and death, rebirth and death. So we have a lot of emotions over the past, whether that's, the past that we've experienced as a collective, as human beings, whether it's the past we've experienced in our personal lives. We're invited to have these emotions over that with the moon in this position, and to have secrets come up about the past that we can finally release the emotions over. So there's also an aspect of, will the secrets be revealed? Or is it more of a subconscious process of just releasing the emotions? And sometimes this is done through illness. Sometimes when a person gets to a certain part of life and they can't, there's no blame or, I just want to remark on this, that the things that we can experience in life can be moved through the physical body. They can also be dealt with energetically. They can be dealt with nutritionally. There's all these different ways, right? With medicine, there's all these different ways of dealing with where the body's at. But sometimes our stories express not just through illness, but just through felt body sensations that we don't know, why do we feel this way? And a lot of times it's nonverbal because the body has its own experience. And so letting yourself be with these emotions, even if you don't know where they're coming from, and allowing them to clear through your system is a healthy thing that you can do right now. And you don't have to know the details to heal from it. And that's a pretty amazing thing. So, yeah, and when you do that, what you want to do is check in spiritually, in alignment with your highest good. Check in and see, are these feelings mine? If they're not yours, you can clear them using energy practices and prayer from your body. You just give it to God. if it's not yours. But if it's yours and you've ascertained, yes, these feelings are mine, even though I don't know where they come from, you can move it through the body by allowing yourself to feel and managing and taking care of yourself in the process. Remember not to go to excess. Jupiter here, which is conjunct Mars by 1 degree, so that's a lot of Jupiter energy. Oh, sorry, not Jupiter. It's Neptune. Neptune is conjunct with Mars. So is, hold on, I think it's it's 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3, 4, trine. So it's trine. So you don't want to go to excess, where you cause disillusionment, where you bring yourself down, because Neptune can do that, and then that can lead to, reactivating bad habits. It can lead to pursuing addictive habits, and general unpleasantness. So my recommendation is say no to that. Say no to that. And instead, you can have a choice to, if you choose, you can move the emotions through in a positive way. You can use this energy to allow the emotions through you, and then have the great insights that you can also have with Neptune and Pisces. Because remember, Neptune had conjuncted Jupiter. And this brought to mind, right? This was like an implantation of energy, a transmission of energy within the collective. What are our greatest hopes and dreams? Like in the most positive expression of this, right? So as you release, set your intentions for what you're doing here. Because when we bring the mind into things, so we can bring the mind to the process by letting ourselves safely express emotions in a way that's in alignment with our highest good. And when you bring an intention to the process, an intentional process, right? That's when you don't let yourself get unconsciously carried away into the negative aspect of the Neptunian expression. Okay, now let's do the other part of this square here, because this is amazing. So here you have Saturn, and you can see here it's also square. 1, 2, 3. It's square. I always check my numbers because I'm a Pisces as a sun sign, and I know that I can get a bit flaky with things sometimes, and so I always have to double check the numbers. And thank God for that Virgo energy opposing Pisces. When you bring them together, right, then it makes magic. Okay, so now you see Saturn is square the sun and the head of the dragon, the North Node. So what's going on with this? This square here is 9 degrees from Mercury. So I'm not going to include that so much in talking about this. I want to really talk about the focus, which is the sun and the head of the dragon here. Now, this is what I think is happening. The sun is bringing a light to our new ways of unfolding our purpose. It's so interesting when you think about the head of the dragon and the tail of the dragon. I've been thinking about this a lot, and related to information that's come up in, analysis that I've been doing and with other people. And it's come to me that I feel that the head of the dragon, the tail of the dragon, that these influences, especially the head of the dragon, can represent the ancient reptilian influence on humanity. And, all human beings in the brain, we have a reptilian brain, an ancient brain, okay? And so, to me, what the head of the dragon says is, okay, you've had all these ancient lifetimes, right? You've had this ancient history, and it involved reptiles. It involved scary monsters influencing us, okay? It involved great adventures. It involved, a trauma in the past. It involved, and this could be your current lifetime, just looking back through your lifetime. We could be looking at humanity in general, and so on. Okay, so this is, the past, but then the head of the dragon says, how can we elevate ourselves and do it different now? How can we escape this reptilian brain, right? How do we evolve the reptilian influences on us? And let me give you an example. I was researching this for the video. Crocodiles are estimated to be 200 million years old, okay? And the interesting thing about, reptiles is it seems like they don't really change that much over the millions of years. I mean, you look at a crocodile and you go, dang, that's like what, you think dinosaur, right? And I'm using the dinosaur term just generally because I have my friend Alex is trained in biology, and she's always, when we talk about things like this, she's always like, oh, well, the Tyrannosaurus Rex is really like a bird-like, structure to its skeletal structure. So I'm just using in general saying, dang, that's ancient. So the head of the reptile here, to me, it's always trying to elevate us, the head of the dragon, elevate us out of this ancient past. Like, is that even possible? Is it possible for the crocodile? It clearly can survive, right? It's built for survival, but can it evolve? Can it expand its consciousness? And how does it do that? And what does it look like when this happens? Because, us human beings, we have the, top of our brain. Clearly, I'm not the biologist here. We have the main part of our brain, and then we have the old reptile brain way in the back there, in the back of the head, right above where your spine connects to the head. And can we evolve this? And what does it mean when we do so for humanity as a group? So what is Saturn doing here? Saturn comes in and compresses this ancient influence, okay? Because when Saturn's in the chart, like, for example, when Saturn's in a relationship chart, if Saturn's on a key point in someone you're in relationship with, one needs to be careful because, that Saturn aspect within you can suppress the other person, through criticism or picking at them or compressing in different ways. It can kind of get not nice and is usually unconscious, but not always. So Saturn comes in and puts this major pressure in this square on the forward ability of this reptile influence, okay? And it comes in and puts this major pressure on the past. And what it kind of implies to me, because Saturn is about structure, okay? So you've got Jupiter just prominent in the chart, right? Boom, Jupiter just wants to come out and expand and move forward. We're in Aries now, right? We're going to step forward, and we're going to lay out the initiating process for the new, and in particular for the whole of humanity, for the new age, okay? And then when we get to Taurus over here, we're going to work on it. Because you know how Aries is, right? Initiate, but then you've got to have the will and the application of effort to continue to just really nail it, with focused work to roll that out into reality and make it a reality. That's where Taurus helps us do that. And Taurus assesses, right? Do I really value this? And what about it do I value? And I think that's why the initiated projects of Aries often will drop off or not be finished, right? Because what happens is the next energy says, is this really worth it? And what do we have here in Taurus? We have Uranus, okay? And Uranus is is the background story that I mentioned when I said we have a fourth story that's in the background. Uranus is so prominent right now, but it's in the background of this full moon energy. And it's more like a distant observer because you see, it's only really in close relationship with Chiron and Venus. And Venus has already passed Chiron. If you look at the essential dignities here, you can see Venus is -10. Okay. So, so what I'm saying is Venus has gone on this long journey of ascertaining her value, especially when she went by Pluto, when she made that long journey into the underworld, past Pluto, and then came back when she retrograded in the winter, of 2022. And then she came past Saturn, and she came past Mars and Neptune and Jupiter. And then Chiron, and as she approached Chiron, she considered all of her woundings. You know, she intended to heal from them, and she intended to claim her mastery, right? And move forward refreshed and anew. She's in Aries, and this is the starting of projects. So now that I've got this mastery, what am I going to do? But most of the action has happened, right? So she's not strong here. And she'll strengthen as she moves forward. But this is why I said this is a background story. But here's Uranus, okay? And so anything that doesn't keep us, that doesn't support, right, our self-mastery related to our core values, Uranus is going to come in and flip that on its head. And, to a certain extent here, something that is not well reasoned, that's moving forward with too much energy, okay, of illusion, Mars conjunct Neptune, like I said, the Jupiterian effect here will be to just flow it so big that it just falls and dissipates, So it's like if you had water in a container and it just overflows and then it just goes and soaks into the ground, now it's going to feed the trees. So there's cautions here. There's cautions for overexuberance, but there's also cautions about how we apply our energies relative to our values and how we apply our energies relative to our ability to have personal discernment. And that's why personal discernment is so important in this time. But Saturn is actually, in my view, although it seems like it's not easy, because we are all affected by these ancient influences of the head of the dragon and the tail of the dragon. But Saturn, in my view, is benefiting us through these squares. And the reason why is it suppresses the reptilian influence and it suppresses the reptilian history. Okay? And it says, we're going to hold that back now. We're going to hold that back because to move into the new age, that stuff isn't helping us so much right now. It's not what's helping us. We're going to allow Jupiter to have the strength, right, to step forward like ultra grand, entry, expression. And when that's done with discernment and in self-mastery, aligned in perfection with divine will through us, aligned with the perfection of the soul, expressing as the human being through the human form in perfect alignment with our values, where we've done some work, okay, on healing ourselves, then this is a powerful expression of Jupiter. And so Saturn is holding back what is old. It is holding back what's been around for hundreds and thousands of years that has been sort of nipping at our heels and influencing us from the shadow realms, influencing our life and death, all right, directing our life and death. We've been making life and death decisions for our entire lives, critical decisions. And we didn't understand properly that when we made those decisions, we were being influenced in ways that we didn't know about. There was something there that was attempting to influence us. And ultimately, Pluto rules Scorpio. Ultimately, The positive here is that this ancient influence, through its harshness in its effect on us, causes the human soul to rise. And there we go, Jupiter at 0 degrees, moving forward, the head of the dragon suppressed here. Okay, so the question is, can this reptile influence, can it elevate and expand as a part of human consciousness? And what I'd say here right now in this moment with the eclipse energies is that it becomes that even that question becomes less important, because the purity of humanity itself, living humans with a living soul, is what's emphasized, and our progress, our plans, our vision of the future, and stepping forward and moving forward on that is primary. Woo! I want to mention that the sun has our back on this. And so if you take a look, I did a little nice chart here. This is as of May 13th. There had been 61 strong solar flares. There's innumerable C-class flares. But in terms of M-class flares and the rare X-class flare, there have been 61 M-class flares, and the majority of these this year, and the majority of these have been in the last 2.5 months. Okay, so that's 2.5 months is 10 weeks. It's incredible. I mean, the sun, and you see this reflected in the Schumann resonance. I talked a little bit about it on my last Schumann video. And 6 X-class flares. Now look at this. I went back and I looked at the M-class flares in 2021, and there was a lot of M-class flares weighted toward the back half, or the back 3 months, of the year. And so when you look at the back 3 months of the year, there were 18 solar flares in in December of 2021. And then that continued, okay? We had 6 a month, 4, 8, 6, and then February, as Alex reminds me, is a shorter month. Okay, so 3. Then look at the ramp up here now. 13, 27, and so far in May, 12 M-class flares. Now, to have this many M-class flares in 2.5 months is incredible. I mean, it's very striking. Okay, so when we look at what's powerful on this astrology chart, the thing to understand is that the solar energy is backing us here. Now, when you look at the essential dignities, the sun is not strong, right? The sun is not as strong. It's -5. But it doesn't matter, because in the physical world, the sun is contributing its energy to the Earth's EM field and to our energy fields, in my view. Okay, I view the human energy field, the Earth energy field, the sun, we're all one system. And right now, there's almost a shadow effect here. Right, a shadow effect. So to me, what that says is the strong influence of the M-class flares and the X-class flares. You're going to see this play out as the shadow reveals, and these energetic changes within our energy field come into our consciousness, shift us, and play out as we hone our mastery and move forward into the rest of 2022 and 23. I'm just going to note one last thing. In the, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, last 7.5 months, we've had a total of 79 M-class flares in 7 months, 7.5 months, and 7 X-class flares. So, wow.